There's a stage in life when saying nothing carries more weight than anything you could put into words. You've grown quieter lately. You no longer explain yourself to people who've already made up their minds to misread you. You've stopped chasing conversations, defending every choice, justifying your intentions, or answering every small provocation. And oddly, that stillness is unsettling to the people around you. They were used to pulling a reaction out of you, used to always knowing what you felt, what you were planning, what could still wound you. Now they can't read you the same way. That's the real shift. You didn't grow weak. You grew aware. You didn't lose your voice. You learned that not every moment deserves it. You didn't vanish. You simply stopped spending your energy on people who never earned it. Now they watch you differently. They wonder about your calm. They question why you don't respond the way you once did. They're slowly realizing that the person they used to provoke, manipulate, or dismiss isn't available for those games anymore. Your quiet has turned into a boundary. Your peace has become non-negotiable. Your patience has matured into wisdom, and the distance you keep now speaks more clearly than words ever could. Sometimes people only recognize your strength once you stop using it on their behalf. They mistook your kindness for weakness, your forgiveness for open access, your silence for ignorance. But you were noticing everything. You were simply choosing your battles, watching the patterns, and letting people's actions expose their real intentions. Something in you has shifted. You no longer need everyone to understand you. You've stopped trying to prove your worth to people who question it. You're becoming someone who can walk away from whatever disrupts your peace. And that kind of person is hard to control because they no longer need approval. So if you've been unusually quiet, don't apologize for it. Maybe this isn't a season for speaking louder. Maybe it's a season for growing wiser. Maybe the quiet is simply making room for you to hear your own thoughts again. Rebuild what needs rebuilding. Strengthen what needs strengthening. Get ready for what's next. Let people wonder. Let them guess. Let them underestimate you if that's what they choose. You don't owe anyone an announcement of your growth. Just keep moving without fanfare. Keep growing without an audience. And hold your plans and your peace close. Eventually, the people who overlooked you will notice your absence and understand, finally, that your silence was never weakness. It was restraint. Two kinds of silence. There's a silence that comes from giving up, and a silence that comes from waking up. What you're living now is the second kind. Not surrender, but clarity about your own worth. For years you may have felt obligated to justify yourself, defend your choices, correct every rumor, and answer every insult, believing that if people only heard your side, they'd finally understand. Eventually, you realize something different. People who've committed to misunderstanding, you don't need more explanation. They need distance. That's when the quiet set in. Not because you had nothing left to say, but because you finally understood your peace mattered more than winning any argument. Your silence became intentional. It became a line you draw, a declaration that other people's chaos no longer dictates how you feel. And people notice. They notice when someone who used to react instantly becomes composed. They notice delayed replies from someone who once answered immediately. They notice when a person who once craved understanding now seems entirely at ease being misread. This throws people off because they knew the old version of you, knew exactly which buttons to press, which comments would provoke defensiveness, which situations would drag you into needless drama. None of that works anymore. You've become unpredictable to anyone who relied on your reactions. And that unpredictability is exactly where your power now lives. You're no longer handing your emotional remote control to other people. Not every accusation warrants a reply. Not every rumor deserves your energy. Not everyone gets access to your inner world. Sometimes the most powerful move is to see a situation clearly and simply choose not to engage. That's not fear, it's discipline. Anyone can react out of anger or ego. It takes real strength to stay composed when you have every reason not to. A mountain doesn't argue with a storm. It just stands. That's the energy you're building now. Grounded, selective, protective of who you're becoming. What the quiet teaches. People may wonder why you've stopped chasing them. Stopped demanding explanations. Stopped reacting to their attempts to provoke you. Let them wonder. You don't owe anyone a report on your own growth. Your actions will say more than any explanation could, and there's a gift hidden in the quiet. You start hearing things the noise used to drown out. Your intuition gets louder. Patterns become obvious. You begin to see who actually supports you versus who only shows up needing something. You realize some relationships only survived because you were the one carrying them. And once you stop carrying what was never yours to carry, life gets noticeably lighter. Don't mistake this season for weakness. You might be quieter because you're thinking more deeply, more distant because you're healing, less available because you're guarding your energy, saying less because you finally learned the difference between being heard and being understood. Once you reach that level, the people who underestimated you start to feel it. Your kindness was never a license to disrespect you. Your patience was never an invitation to exploit you. Your forgiveness was never a promise to endure the same treatment forever. You've simply decided your peace isn't something you'll trade away to keep others comfortable. Keep your composure where it serves you. Keep building. You don't need to convince anyone of your strength. Once you stop letting people disturb your peace, they'll notice it on their own. Your silence isn't an absence of power. It's proof you've learned to control it. Patience becomes self-respect. There's a turning point when patience stops being something you extend to others and becomes something you finally give yourself. You may have let people cross lines because conflict felt worse than tolerance. You gave second chances, hoping people could change. You stayed composed under provocation because you refused to become what was provoking you. And somewhere in that, people mistook your patience for weakness, your kindness for permission, your silence for obliviousness. They were wrong. You weren't powerless. You were restrained. And there's a real difference between someone who can't fight and someone who chooses not to fight every fight. The first lacks power. The second understands it. You're no longer trying to prove which one you are. Your conduct is the proof. Your boundaries are the language. Your silence is the clearest message you've ever sent. Think about the energy once spent trying to make people understand you. The defending, the apologizing for things that weren't fully your fault. The effort to keep peace with people determined to create chaos. Eventually, you learned something both painful and freeing. You cannot manufacture peace with someone committed to misreading you. And you can't keep sacrificing your well-being because someone else won't take ownership of their behavior. That's when patience turned into wisdom. The question changed from how do I make them understand to why am I still allowing this? That single shift changes everything. Because once you start valuing yourself differently, you start acting differently. Fewer instant responses to provocation, less rushing to defend yourself, less chasing people who create distance and then blame you for it, less settling for scraps from people who've already shown you what they're willing to give. People comfortable with the old, you may test the new one. Bring up the past. try to provoke the familiar reaction, make you feel guilty for changing. Don't let their discomfort become your problem. You're allowed to evolve, to be selective, to decline without a lengthy justification, to leave conversations that keep disrespecting you, to guard your peace without guilt. Real strength rarely looks dramatic. Sometimes it's reading a message and choosing not to answer. Sometimes it's walking away from a fight everyone expected you to have. Sometimes it's declining to explain yourself to people who've already picked their version of events. Sometimes it's staying calm while someone tries to drag you back into chaos you've already outgrown. And that composure is exactly what makes people reconsider how they treat you. Not because you're threatening anyone, but because their old tactics simply stop working. They can no longer control your emotions, guilt you into compliance, use silence to make you chase them, or stir up drama and expect your participation. You've learned the difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is emotional and gives you power away. Response is intentional and lets you keep it. The more you practice that distinction, the more peace you carry. Your patience was never a lifetime pass for mistreatment. Your kindness was never bottomless. Your forgiveness was never a contract to stay stuck in the same cycle. You can forgive and still create distance. You can love someone and still hold boundaries. You can wish someone well and still decide they don't belong in your inner circle anymore. That's not bitterness. That's maturity. Don't feel guilty about being less available. Don't apologize for protecting your energy. Don't let anyone tell you peace equals weakness. You've simply learned your life is too valuable to spend it constantly proving yourself. Let them wonder about your quiet. Let them notice your distance. You don't have to announce your boundaries. You only have to hold them, guarding your energy. Something changes when you stop giving everyone unrestricted access to you. You realize not everyone deserves your instant reply, your deepest thoughts, your plans, or your attention. For a long time, you may have equated being a good person with being endlessly available, answering every call, showing up for every need, explaining yourself to every doubter, chasing every person who walked away. You thought that was loyalty. Eventually you learned that constantly pouring into people who never pour back doesn't make you loving, it makes you depleted. Now you're becoming selective and people notice. The instant responder takes their time. The over-explainer is now comfortable saying, "You don't have to understand." The chaser now walks away from one-sided relationships. This isn't arrogance, it's awareness. Your energy isn't infinite, and where it goes matters. Every conversation, every relationship, every environment leaves a residue. Some leave peace and encouragement. Others leave doubt and exhaustion. Once you notice that difference, you stop granting everyone unlimited access. Ask yourself, does this connection add peace to my life, or does it constantly take peace away? That question alone can reshape your relationships. You don't need to expose someone or fight them to protect yourself from them. Sometimes the healthiest response is simply quietly stepping back. No announcement, no explanation, no confrontation, just distance. And that distance gives you clarity. Away from the noise, you start noticing who only reached out when they needed something, who grew uncomfortable with your success, who listened only when it benefited them, who wanted access without offering support. You notice how much lighter you feel once you stop carrying relationships that were never balanced to begin with. This is why some people are confused by the new you. They were used to unlimited access, calling whenever, provoking you for a reaction, disappearing and expecting to be chased, crossing boundaries and assuming eventual forgiveness. Now you're different, not angry, just no longer available for that cycle. Anger keeps you tethered to what hurt you. Peace lets you release it. You don't need revenge when you have boundaries, and you don't need to prove anyone wrong when your life is already moving forward. The people who genuinely value you won't require you to perform for their approval. Your job isn't to make everyone comfortable with your growth. It's to stay true to who you're becoming. People will say, "You've changed." Let them. You have. You've learned the difference between what deserves your attention and what doesn't. You're discovering the value of privacy, that some plans grow best unannounced. Some dreams need quiet before they need an audience. Some victories taste better unspoken beforehand. And some parts of your life get stronger without outside opinion. Protecting your energy isn't building walls around your heart. It's building doors and deciding who gets a key. You can stay compassionate without staying accessible to everyone. Generous without letting people drain you. Loving while refusing to accept disrespect. That balance is maturity. So if you've gone quiet, understand what's really happening. You're not disappearing. You're becoming. You're not intentional. You're not losing people. You're discovering who was only ever attached to the giving version of you. You're not turning cold. You're becoming discerning about where your warmth goes. Your energy is precious. Your peace is valuable. Your attention is powerful. Stop handing unlimited access to people offering limited respect. Let your silence create space. Your boundaries create clarity. Your growth speak for itself. The right people won't ask you to sacrifice your peace to prove you care. They'll respect your quiet and value your presence when you choose to offer it. Silence is not the same as not noticing. There's a difference between being quiet and being oblivious, and the people who underestimated you are starting to learn it. Just because you haven't said much doesn't mean you stopped paying attention. In fact, the quiet may have given you something noise never could: clarity. When you stop reacting to everything, you start observing everything. Patterns instead of isolated moments. The gap between what people say and what they actually do. Who behaves differently depending on who's watching. Who supports you privately but goes silent in public. Who claims to be in your corner while quietly hoping you fail. Actions tell the truth long before words do. That's part of why you've gone quiet. You don't need to expose every contradiction you find or confront every disappointment. Sometimes the most powerful response to seeing the truth clearly is simply adjusting how much access that person gets from you going forward. Life looks different once you stop over-explaining. You start listening more closely to tone, timing, consistency. You notice sudden friendliness that appears only when someone needs something, support that only shows up when your success poses no threat. Questions asked for ammunition rather than care. Instead of confronting every one of these moments, you just take note of it. That's maturity. Not every truth requires a public reckoning. Not every betrayal needs revenge. Not every lie needs an immediate correction. Sometimes you just absorb the lesson, adjust your boundaries, and keep moving. This is the part of your quiet that's easy to misread. You're not ignoring what's happening. You're processing it differently. The old, you might have demanded answers on the spot. The current you understands that forcing a confession doesn't rewrite the truth. If someone lies, that lie belongs to them. If someone manipulates, it eventually shows. You don't need to tear someone down to validate that they hurt you. Time reveals what people try to bury. Your job is to stay grounded while it does. This is where quiet becomes strategic. People can brace for an argument or an accusation, but they don't always know how to handle someone who simply observes and walks away. Your composure can make people question themselves, wondering what you know, what you've noticed, replaying their own words, because they can't tell if you believe them or simply chose silence. You don't need to manufacture that uncertainty. It's a natural byproduct of no longer handing out access to your thoughts. You don't owe anyone a preview of your next move, a rundown of your plans, or a summary of every lesson you've learned. There's power in privacy. Goals can grow quietly. Healing can happen quietly. Transformation can happen without commentary. And when the results eventually show, people are often caught off guard, having been waiting for an announcement instead of watching the work. Don't underestimate what happens when you stop talking about what you'll do and simply do it. Quiet gives you room to build, to think, to develop discipline. And discipline is usually what separates a passing burst of motivation from real change. While others debate you, you can be improving. While they guess your next move, you can already be making it. While they wait for a reaction, you can already be moving forward. There's no need to go back to being loud just because your quiet makes others uncomfortable. Strength doesn't require volume, and respect doesn't require aggression. Real respect often comes from people recognizing that you could respond, but have the wisdom to choose when not to. Let them wonder. Your silence isn't a puzzle that needs solving. It's simply proof your priorities changed. You're no longer trying to win every argument. You're trying to win your own peace. You're no longer collecting rebuttals. You're collecting wisdom. Eventually, the people who mistook your silence for confusion will realize you understood more than they gave you credit for. You were watching, learning, and growing the entire time. The strongest chapter, the deepest transformation happens when you finally accept that you don't need to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes the strongest version of you is the one who no longer feels obligated to narrate every thought, justify every decision, or answer everyone determined to disturb your calm. This quiet isn't temporary anymore. It's become part of who you are. It was shaped by broken trust, by people who underestimated you, by hard seasons where you had only yourself to rely on. None of it broke you. It refined you and taught you that strength isn't always about fighting back. Sometimes it's knowing you could respond and choosing peace instead. That's exactly why people see you differently now. You're harder to trigger, no longer desperate for approval, no longer chasing people who don't value you, no longer explaining yourself to everyone who questions your choices. You've grown comfortable standing alone when it's called for. And that kind of steadiness is hard to manipulate. People used to the old version of you, the one who gave endless chances, answered every question, tried to keep everyone happy, may not know how to relate to this one, someone who understands limits, values their time, guards their peace, and no longer confuses kindness with obligation. None of this means your heart has hardened. It means it's grown wiser. You can love deeply without letting love be misused. You can forgive without reopening every door. You can wish someone well without inviting them back in. You can care about someone and still know distance is necessary. That's not coldness, it's emotional maturity. Maybe the most beautiful part is that you no longer need vindication. You don't need anyone to regret losing you. Don't need to prove them wrong. Don't need a dramatic moment where your worth is suddenly obvious to everyone. Your life can be the answer. Your growth can be the response. Your consistency can be the proof. While others wait for your reaction, you can be rebuilding. While they discuss your quiet, you can be shaping your future. While they wonder what happened to the person who used to demand explanations, you can be becoming someone who no longer needs them. This is what happens once you stop seeking validation from people who were never qualified to define your worth. You begin measuring yourself differently, asking whether you're growing wiser, stronger, kinder, more disciplined, more at peace, more aligned with the life you actually want? Those questions matter more than anyone's approval. Once you reach that point, outside noise loses its grip. People can misunderstand you and you stay calm. They can criticize you and you keep going. They can leave and you can grieve without begging them to stay. They can underestimate you and you keep growing without needing to announce your potential. That's freedom, living your life as a responsibility to yourself instead of a performance for others. So if people are starting to sense you're not someone to be trifled with, don't treat that as license to become intimidating. Treat it as confirmation that your boundaries are finally visible. Real respect doesn't come from fear. It comes from consistency. When people know your words carry weight, your boundaries carry consequences, and your peace isn't up for negotiation, they start treating you differently. You don't need threats or displays of strength, just consistency with the standards you've set for your own life. There will be moments people test those standards, trying to pull you back into old patterns, reminding you who you used to be, even accusing you of changing. Let them. Growth always looks like change to people who benefited from the way you used to be. You don't owe anyone permanent access to a version of yourself you've outgrown. You're allowed to evolve, to grow quieter, to become more selective, to protect your heart while keeping it open, to walk away without narrating every step, to choose peace even when conflict would be the easier road. So keep going without fear. Keep your standards intact and your heart clean. Keep your plans private when it serves you and your boundaries firm. Don't get pulled into arguments just because someone misses the version of you they could easily provoke. You've outgrown that. Your silence taught you patience. Your patience taught you discernment. Your discernment taught you boundaries. And your boundaries are now teaching others how to treat you. You don't need to become someone to fear. You just need to become someone who can't be manipulated. Let your actions do the talking. Let your character stay consistent. Let your growth unfold at its own pace. The people who truly belong in your life will honor who you're becoming, and the ones who only valued you when you were easier to control will eventually understand. Your quiet was never weakness. It was the start of your strongest chapter yet.